Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here this week with a special guest from Lethbridge, and that is Marc Slingerland. Marc is a candidate running for us, and it's great to have you on the program, Marc. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It's good to be able to chat.
So, Marc Slingerland, for those who may not know him, is a teacher, a school administrator, and he's been a lifelong resident of Lethbridge. He holds an MSc, what do you call that?
Master of Science and Master of Ed.
Master Science, Master of Ed degrees from the University of Lethbridge. Marc's involvement with youth in our communities inspires him to work for a Canada that will provide them with opportunities, a sovereign Canada true to its rich heritage based on the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Citizens of Lethbridge deserve an opportunity to vote for a candidate, a party, and a leader who are all committed to protection of human life from conception to natural death, to the critical importance of families as the foundation of a strong, stable society, and to the preservation of fundamental freedoms. Marc is eager to work towards a limited, accountable federal government that recognizes its proper role in providing freedom for families to be able to raise their children, for businesses to create prosperity, and for local organizations to meet the needs of their communities. Join us in seeking principled, positive leadership for Canada. So if anybody wants to read that over again, you can go to Marc's webpage, his candidate webpage at chp.ca. But I've been speaking with several of the candidates during this campaign, and this is the last week of the campaign. And so we thought we'd squeeze one more in. Marc is a seasoned veteran, been with the party a long time, and has run for us, represented the Christian Heritage Party in several campaigns, a number of campaigns. And so, Marc, you're busy as a principal and other things that you do involved with your church and so on. So, number one, thanks for taking the time to be a candidate for us. That adds another, kind of a pile of work for you, and you have a good team there working with you. And then thanks for taking the time to have this discussion tonight. So appreciate it.
Pleasure.
So
Yeah,
like I guess when you decided to throw your hat in the ring one more time, what were the motivating factors for you that moved you to take that step? And I'm sure much of the same that has motivated you in the past.
mhm.
Maybe that first, and then we'll talk about what the people in your community are discussing during this campaign.
Sure. Yeah, as you said, I've been involved with the CHP for a long time. I have gotten that question a few times along the way. How did you get into politics? And it's, I guess, a bit of a family legacy. So I have been going to CHP events as basically as long as I can remember. My grandfather and my dad and my uncle were all involved earlier on, still are to some extent. My grandfather's passed away, but definitely have had the opportunity to represent the CHP a few times, and I think it's always with the same purpose in mind now. It's we have an opportunity, especially at election time, to draw the attention of our fellow citizens of Canada at a time when they are paying attention to political issues, to the things that are most important. And I've heard that from campaign teams of candidates that have run against a number of times. For the Conservative Party, there's no upside in bringing up moral issues.
Yeah.
They in a sense, if we don't run, they can assume they've got all the social conservatives taken care of, and they can just focus on economic issues. And it's not that those don't matter, but ultimately, life is the number one issue, and all the more so as our country has slid in off the euthanasia cliff. Those reminders become all the more important. And so, yeah, again, you read it in the bio. I wrote it that way on purpose. It's a candidate, a leader, and a party that is all pro-life. Right?
Right.
We are fortunate here in Lethbridge to have a strong pro-life MP. Rachel Thomas has been she was the co-sponsor of Cassie and Molly's law, and so has solid pro-life credentials. And I only half jokingly say, as soon as the election is over, I'll go back to supporting her 100%. But she has a fight within her own party, right?
Yeah.
That's actually the angle that I take. And with our own church community, our own school, we run student vote, and it's certainly not that, oh, the principal of the school is running, so everybody's going to vote for him. There's the families are divided, and understandably, you know what? I'm thankful that there are good pro-lifers working within the Conservative Party. I view it as a both and rather than an either or.
Right.
But since the days of Harper and before, they've been promising that if only their guy gets in, then things will be different. And well, several of their guys have gotten in, and things are no different.
Yeah.
In fact, we just heard again last, I guess it's the Friday before last now, right? I mean, Mr. Poilievre has doubled down on the pro-abortion language within the Conservative Party, even more strongly, actually, than has been said in the past. It's not just that he will not introduce, or the uh, cabinet will not introduce, but under his watch, no legislation will be introduced on abortion and euthanasia, despite the well-documented harms and the chastisement even from the United Nations on the threats to Canadians with disabilities. He has committed not to expand it further, which is good as far as it goes. But there's no inkling that there'll be any pushback. I view that as a lost opportunity for himself and for the Conservative Party. But all the more reason that we need to be in the fray, publicly speaking up. And even if we don't move that many votes, we have an opportunity to get the word out, to talk to Canadians, and hopefully remind them of what matters most in our country.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Harper said the same thing when when he was Prime Minister. I don't know that he ever said no pro-life legislation would be introduced. He did say no pro-life legislation would pass as long as he was Prime Minister, and he kept that promise in spite of all the accusations of the media that said, oh, he's hiding, he's got a hidden agenda, whatever. But no, and people who thought way back, they said, well, we got to get Harper in. He's just saying that to get in. Once he gets in, he'll do something about abortion. No, the answer is no. He said, I'm not going to. Then they said, oh, he can't do anything with a minority government. Once he has a majority, he'll do something about it. And they should have taken him at his word. I guess people don't always take politicians at their word, but in this case, he said, I'm not going to do anything about it. And he actually kept that promise. And Mr. Poilievre, I think, is even a little bit more adamant about it
Mm-hmm.
than Mr. Harper. And
Yes, I think I've frequently say that any compromise that a leader is willing to make to get into power, they will continue to make to remain in power.
yeah,
And yeah, in terms of Mr. Poilievre, he's I'm afraid he's quite hardened on the matter. I have um, fairly close acquaintances, friends who knew him as a young man when he attended National Campus Life Network events. He was quite involved in the pro-life movement as a young man, and that he has turned his back on it so completely. To me, is an indication that he is hardened in that, and will not be open to persuasion.
well, we saw him. We don't know what took place behind closed doors, but when MP Arnold Viersen, Peace River,
Hmm.
spoke up about both abortion and he said he would vote against abortion and against same-sex marriage if that opportunity came up. and he
Yeah.
was, as I understand, he didn't tell me this, but severely chastised by his leader and even sort of sent into seclusion
Mm,
during, and of course these guys are trying to, meanwhile the CBC will accuse them of a hidden agenda and whatever. But I think it's obvious that they want to stay as far away. And when I say they, Mr. Polyev and his inner circle want to stay as far away from the abortion issue, from MAiD, also the gender issues. Like
yeah.
he has said, same-sex marriage, wonderful, love whoever you want to love, and he, whether he's going to ever take a step about women and men, biological males and female sports. I don't know if he's made direct statements about that, but this whole thing with the LGBT movement, the advocacy and activism in that regard, I think really picked up speed when same-sex marriage was legalized, made the law of the land.
Mm,
And I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle and still keep same-sex marriage. As you know, our policy would be to change that law. We think it was a mistake when it was made. In fact, in 1999, the Liberal government at the time voted overwhelmingly against same-sex marriage, and
mm.
a few years later, in 2005, they passed it by a small majority, and of course now they treat it as a sacred cow that you cannot touch, can't even talk about. But um, the and that
That's one of these things with almost a ratchet, right? I mean, there's never a sense of taking a step back.
no,
Sometimes uh, the most we can hope for with a conservative government, it seems, is to slow the progress in the same wrong direction.
yeah,
And you know what? I would nothing would make me happier than to have that change.
yeah,
If the Conservative Party would discover its conscience and move, have enough good pro-lifers in it to move, that would be wonderful. Right? I do worry sometimes that that there's a yeah, almost an enmity in speaking about the Conservative Party, that we don't actually want them to turn around or to
no.
adopt good policies because it might be bad for the CHP. And that's certainly not the way I think.
Well, it's not the
We're
way I
about
think either.
principles and about policies that we want to see enacted, right?
Yeah,
And any avenue, if they want to steal our policy book wholesale, nothing would make me happier.
yeah. My dad used to say, "You can accomplish anything if you don't care who gets the credit." And we
Right.
would love to see the Conservative Party pick up our policy book and begin implementing it, piece
Absolutely.
by piece. That would be great. I don't think there's much likelihood of that happening in the near future, but you never know. So, but that is the question that we
No, this is the thing
all,
that sorry, that's exactly why in ridings like ours, I mean, the Conservative Party, understandably, in a sense, they're looking for votes in suburban Toronto and in Quebec, and so I come from semi-rural Alberta, and the biggest fights I think that a pro-life MP from here has to fight are not with the CBC, it's within her own party. And so that's the case that I've put to people here. If you really want the Conservative Party to be your voice, then you should vote for the CHP because that gives ammunition to pro-life MP to say these are things that matter to voters in my riding. These are issues that I need to defend. I need to speak up, or we're going to lose more votes.
yeah,
And we've been talking about life issues, but the same thing is true on the gender issue. Is there going to be accountability for the Conservative Party for their cowardice on Bill C4?
right.
That was a conservative motion that moved that through in unanimous fashion, and no conservative member spoke up against it, some of them were clearly overjoyed about it. So that is a sizable chunk of the Conservative caucus that also does not represent the views of many people who are voting Conservative over here.
Yeah.
And if there's no consequence for them and no voice to speak out against that, how will they understand? How will they know that this is not what people want?
Yeah. It was
It's a line
Mr.
I've used in several of my forum opening statements. Right, the government can't seem to keep repeat offenders behind bars, but they have managed to criminalize loving parents and counselors and caregivers who want to provide gender affirming counseling for their gender dysphoric children. It's rather backwards.
Yeah. Well, it was under O'Toole. He was the leader of the Conservative Party when that bill passed, and it was quite surprising, shocking to the people we knew, conservatives and
Mm-hmm.
CHP members, that a conservative member would stand up and say, "Let's pass this bill," and it went first, second, and third reading in one day with not one voice raised in opposition. And we know for sure that there were conservatives who did not like it, did not agree with it. I don't know if they were threatened beforehand. Again, is kind of inside baseball, whether Mr. O'Toole said, this is what's going to happen, you all better keep quiet, or whether it happened so fast that they didn't realize the rug was being pulled out from under them. But regardless, it got first, second, third reading and went on with no vote or not even a voice represented against it. And I think
Right.
some of the better conservative MPs are kind of embarrassed about that now. I'm pretty sure they
Oh,
are.
certainly.
Um, but there's been no mood from the top to go back on it and change it back. But like you say, it criminalizes parents and pastors, and meanwhile we're letting violent offenders and drug dealers and things go free and walk around, and here's a parent who's trying to counsel their young child in the area of gender. If it doesn't fit with the Liberal Party line, then that person could go to jail. I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't seen that
Well,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
yeah. So, have you been speaking with people? I know you've had a couple of debates, or how is it? Uh, what's your
Yeah.
debate schedule?
Yeah, we've had three candidate forums now. They are they're finished in this riding.
Okay,
Two were last week. Yeah, so the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce and the Coaldale Chamber of Commerce, the main city in the riding here, and one of the towns in the riding, each hosted one, and then there was one in the public library that they typically do. Run before where there've been others, but this time those were the three,
sure.
and yeah, all slightly different formats and different focus areas, but in each case, you have conversations afterwards. People don't realize that a party like us exists, and some are excited to find that, and some find it difficult then to know.
Yeah, yeah.
After one of the forums, a gentleman came up to me and he was wearing a conservative pin. And he said, I came here just to confirm who I was going to vote for, but you've made it really hard.
Yeah,
I count
well,
that as a success.
that's good. We're giving people something to think about. I know there is,
Yeah.
the conservatives have some momentum, and they actually had more momentum before Mr. Carney became the leader of the Liberals. I do not understand why that gave anyone second thoughts. It was so terrible under Mr. Trudeau. Mr. Carney has been his mentor or advisor.
Mm.
And so everything that we got from Trudeau, all the abuse we received as taxpayers and as citizens, it's likely that we're going to get, if Carney becomes the prime minister, I think we'll get that in spades. But yeah, that question about, well, I'd like to vote for you. I agree with your policies and whatever, but I don't want to let the Liberals win. No, we kind of are dealing with that. I do have some friends who are leaning that direction. I have others who come up to me and say, when I'm talking to my friends, they say this and this, but I'm going to vote for you because I want a clean conscience, want to be voting for
Yeah,
life, family, and freedom. And of course, we have thought in the past that Rachel Thomas, she's a great member of Parliament. It would be nice if she were a Christian Heritage Party candidate and member of Parliament. But anyway,
agreed.
we have the opportunity to bring truth and a level of truth and a few topics to the table that just would not be on the table if we weren't there. If you weren't there at the debate, I'm sure some of these topics would not come up.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure, for sure. You know what? And I try to be very careful in my approach. The first time I did run against Ms. Thomas, I spoke with her ahead of time, right? It's not that I'm against her, certainly not personally, and not even as a representative. She works very hard. She's a very capable local representative. It's uh, yeah. I honestly believe I am giving her ammunition in a fight that she has. There's, the last number of elections, as many times as Miss Thomas has run, and even the couple of candidates before her, there's a 20,000 vote buffer between her and the next candidate. So my pitch to one of the forums was let's leave her with a 10,000 vote buffer, even assuming that all of the left vote is going to collapse onto the Liberals, as
Right.
some are predicting. Um, you know what? So fine, it's 10,000 now. Give 5,000 of them to me, and she will have won just as much, and she will have a much, much stronger hand to play in public and in her own party. And so I view it as running actually for her rather than against her.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I'm getting along well with the conservative candidate in my district as well. He's not outspoken on the pro-life issues, but he's otherwise would be a lot of common sense and reason in our area. And I told him, regardless of who wins this election, I want to spend some time talking with him after the campaign because
Right.
these issues, honestly, during the campaign, if you aren't already a pro-lifer going in, it's you're getting pressure from on top, you're getting pressure from the public. It's not really an easy time to give honest reflection to the issues of
Right.
life and marriage and so on. Um, there was a wonderful conservative member of parliament some years ago. He hasn't been in office for I don't know when he finished his last term, Mr. James Lunny from Vancouver Island, and our good friend Frank Wagner used to run against him. And
Right.
I spoke with Mr. Lunny in his office, and we talked about this issue, and he said, "Oh, I never minded Frank running against me. He would take all the hard questions, and I could just nod my head and agree, and Frank would take it on the chin, and he would take the flack, and I would get the votes, and so it worked out fine for me. And but he respected Frank Wagner for bringing these issues forward, and I think any good MP that's worth their salt will respect people like us who are bringing these important issues for public scrutiny. A lot of these issues, the public just does not think about them from day to day or from month to month. And I
No.
think it's really important that we are there, um, bringing those items for discussion. I was going to ask you, in your various forums or even talking to other people in the riding, uh, the issues of taxation. Have you had opportunity to discuss the CHP's fair tax
Hmm.
to any extent, and what do people say about that?
Yeah, one of the forums it hardly came up, but the other two it certainly has, and I had a interesting conversation after the forum. I brought up that the fair tax proposal. I think there was a question. It was a Chamber of Commerce forum, and there was a question specifically about taxation and fairness in taxation. And so I said, yeah, our proposal is actually very simple. Just abolish the income tax, and gasps around the room, right? And
Yeah.
someone pointed, I hadn't even picked up the contradiction, but someone pointed out to me afterwards, there was surprise and shock when I said that. But, 3 minutes later, the NDP candidate said, we're going to cancel income taxes for anyone with incomes below $20,000 or 40,000 or whatever the number is. And then it was all applause and cheers. And so there's a certain level of shock there. Um, I did have one person come up to me after a forum. I don't know if they were even at a forum, but it is one that catches people's attention. That he had heard that policy, and they were talking it over in the lunchroom at work. And yeah, they actually that sounded kind of radical, but it actually made a lot of sense. And so
Well, it
I
didn't
think it's
originate with us.
something.
Yeah.
There's some implementation difficulties, and to be honest, I don't know whether we could go 100% in that direction, but that's definitely the right direction to go, and
Yeah.
and one that uh, once people wrap their head around it a little bit, just because people have gotten so used to the income tax, despite it being a temporary war measure, that's just the world we grow up in, right? So
Yeah.
there would be, there'd be some wrinkles to work out, but it's definitely something that attracts attention.
Yeah, pretty well everyone hates the income tax when they have to pay it, but the idea of getting rid of it, I guess it is a bit radical, but you know, it's something that I hope people are considering. I've spoken about it in a few of the forums that we've had here. If you don't have like you get to keep all the money you earn, the harder you work, the if you put in overtime, all that stuff,
Yeah.
you get to keep it all. But then, of course, when you spend money, then you pay it on your purchases. But the fact that you have a choice how much tax you're going to pay, you can buy a luxury automobile and pay more, or buy an economy model and pay less, and the choice is entirely up to you. And that's something I really like about it. And
Hmm.
it's being discussed in the States. We're not the only ones talking about this.
No, no, for sure.
There's a whole organization in the United States about the fair tax, and some presidential candidates. Mike Huckabee has been one that's been in favor of this approach. So we'll see where it goes. How about tariffs? What's the general impression you're getting from voters in your district? And then maybe just you can give us your response to
Yeah,
that.
to be honest, that's not something I've mixed up with too much in forums. That everybody has a lot to say about tariffs, and one of the questions on one of the forums was how we as candidates or our parties would um, ensure stable and predictable markets for the future. And I mean that we are not God. So this idea that anyone has the solution that's going to be the fix and it's going to be taken care of, I think that's delusional.
Right,
That there's lots of chatter about the tariffs, and I wasn't going to use my rebuttal cards on that matter for the most part.
right,
Where it came up, the whole idea of we're gonna get them back, right? Like get into a trade war and show them these retributive tariffs. I said to one reporter from one of the news organizations that asked about it. Like, to me, phrasing it as a trade war is actually not helpful. This idea of war that's very much then a win and lose, right? And
right,
when we are the size of Canada's economy trapped on the continent with the US, we are going to have to get along with them. There's just no question that that is our most important trading relationship. And absolutely, we should diversify our economy. We should have done so long ago. Everybody knew that, but maybe this will shake us out of our complacency a bit. But tit for tat tariffs that they're going to change their mind because of that is a pipe dream. And
No,
the way that it's phrased,
Mr. Trump isn't too easily intimidated, I don't think.
well, no,
Yeah,
but
and and
but even if he were,
yeah,
right, I
yeah,
think that is just a not a winning argument.
yeah.
And the fact that a tariff is actually a tariff imposed by Canada is actually a tax on Canadians. It,
That's the most obvious thing is, hey, let's not punish Canadians for you don't like Mr. Trump's tariffs. Well, making Canadians pay more for their products is not going to help us at all. And I don't think that. Um, okay, what I've been saying is that we also need to take seriously the first thing that he said when he first started talking about tariffs. He talked about our border, our porous border, our fentanyl problem, the cross-border drugs and human smuggling going on. Actually, when he said that, I thought, what's he talking about? It's all your southern border is your big
Mhm.
problem, not the Canada-U.S. border. But I've since learned that there's a real deal. There is fentanyl coming into, or fentanyl precursors coming into the Vancouver port. There's fentanyl labs in Vancouver, and I think the cross-border thing. I think it goes both ways. There's drugs coming into Canada, handguns, there's other things but it
Sure.
just means we should be doing a better job on our border. We should actually be doing a better job on our port. I think
Well,
only about
that's
1% of the containers that come into the Vancouver port get checked. And so obviously there's a lot of stuff getting by the filter, and
yeah.
we need to crack down on that. And of course, BC, of all the provinces, is a province that has legalized what we always called and considered illegal drugs.
Hmm.
So, you know, uh, to me, we should have taken his comments as a warning, a wake-up call for us. Not so much a warning what they're going to do to us, but what are we going to do to protect our own country, our own young people from fentanyl and human smuggling and stuff.
Two things I think I would say there. I mean, in terms of what's going into the States, the US bears the primary responsibility for that direction at the border,
Right,
right?
exactly.
As you said, I mean, handguns and um, criminal trafficking into Canada from the States is certainly also an issue. Border security is a fundamental role of government. It's something that we should do better, and incoming into Canada is definitely a bigger deal. So those arguments are not without merit. I think it has become fairly clear that for Mr. Trump that's a pretext. I mean, the way that he talks about the tariffs in general is on in economic terms.
Yes,
And so the fact that he's doing it under emergency powers, which is the only way he can actually do it, um, that to me is disingenuous. And I as much as we agree with parts of Mr. Trump's agenda, particularly statements he's made on biological sex and the importance of families, there are certainly pieces of his administration that we can get behind. But the way that he does it, I have serious reservations about. And the rule of law, right? We always refer back to that phrase in the charter. The charter is a problematic document as far as that goes. It doesn't grant rights; it recognizes them.
right.
It's misunderstood, and it's had deleterious effects on our judicial system. But that piece in the preamble, Canada founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That means something. If not to anyone else, it certainly means something to me. And we rightly are concerned about emergency powers and their sweeping use and abuse, for instance, in the COVID years here in Canada. And I view what what Mr. Trump is doing with the tariffs under the pretext of emergency powers as akin to that. So that's it's troubling to me that that is the means by which potentially good and understandable policy objectives are being pursued in a less than straightforward manner.
Yeah, well, that's a good take on it. And we certainly, I think our approach has been not to try to get into a fist fight with Trump over these issues, but clean up what we can. I think Justin Trudeau proposed to spend $1.3 billion on the Canada-US border. And I think when you figure that the interest on our national debt is 1.4 billion per week,
Yeah,
it's kind of a drop in the bucket. We have a long border. There's a lot of areas of our border that are unsupervised or whatever, and I think if we were going to be serious about defending that border, it's going to take something more significant than what the lip service really that Justin Trudeau has given it.
yeah,
But yeah, and we have to recognize the U.S. is a friend, is an ally, and our best trading partner. We rely on them for military defense. I think we recognize that Canada's military is in very poor shape. We're not in a good condition to handle any actual threat. And the United States is probably just in saying time for us to pull up our socks in that department and get to work, beef up our military with some modern equipment. Certainly,
sure,
you know, pay our soldiers what they're worth, and then look after our veterans that are being neglected, I would say,
sure.
under the current regime. So,
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, defense is one of the core competencies of a federal government, and that there's also just a justice aspect, right? We've made certain commitments that we have never followed through on, perhaps never intended to. It's all about yeah, making bold statements and trying to reap the rewards for good intentions without ever following through. And that is unjust.
right,
And the the this is something else that both liberal and conservative governments have fallen prey to. Right? It's not been a priority. Military procurement under the conservative government passed was no panacea either. That whole area really needs to be depoliticized.
yeah,
And as you say, then caring for our veterans, be sure that the trading is there and the equipment is there, and then that the care is there for them, actual medical care, not just an offer of assistance in suicide.
right, yeah, yeah. That's to me, that's so insulting that veterans who actually need help are being told, well, we could just give you a lethal injection and that your problems will be over. That's so disgusting to me that you could even think of saying that to someone who's risked their life for the country.
Exactly.
So, Mark, thanks for your time. Before we go, there's some things we haven't touched on that you'd like to say, some of the things that are key to your hopes and dreams for Canada and for this campaign in Lethbridge.
You know what? I think I'll go back. You try to summarize it in the bio
Yeah,
that people read, right? So, just the opportunity we have to run is itself a gift. Right? We have a democracy, and it's not structured as well as I could wish. And the whole voting system, first past the post, is a poor system, especially for parties like ours, where support is spread thinly but evenly across the whole country. It's not concentrated in little areas. but nevertheless, the freedom to run, to be vocal about these issues. The tax credits, I guess those would go away too if we got rid of the income tax, but
Yeah, that's
that'd be
right.
a small price to pay.
Yeah,
That was a gift bought at great price and one we shouldn't take for granted. I'm thankful to be able to represent the CHP. I'm thankful for a comprehensive policy book with good support from yourself and the election readiness team. And yeah, just being able to have these conversations with Canadians, let them know that there are better policies on offer, and where it goes and where that seed lands and what happens to it, that's out of our control. But we try to be faithful in presenting the truth, and then it will do the work that God has intended for it.
very good. Marc Slingerland, CHP candidate for Lethbridge, and of course, it's by the time this airs on Thursday, it'll just be a few days left until final voting day. We cast our ballots today in Skeena-Bulkley Valley at the advanced polls, and they were pretty busy. Quite a few people voting in the advanced polls, and they told me that it had been busy for the past few days. So we look forward to Monday. May God watch over you and your work, both as a CHP candidate and your work in the Christian school. We highly value what you do there, building into these young lives kind of moral principles that this country was founded on, and that could help us to recover the prosperity and freedom that we once had as Canadians.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the opportunity, Rod. Thank you for your leadership and example. We look forward to seeing the results on Monday, Lord willing.
Wonderful. God bless you. Thanks so much.